Where were you when the time eventually arrived? The moment the courtroom went silent, and the judge's voice cut through years of tension, betrayal, and carefully spun lies. Meri Brown, the judge said gently, I know this isn't easy to hear, but Christine's claim is valid. The ruling is in her favor. And just like that, decades of loyalty, sacrifice, and silent endurance collapsed in front of the cameras. And in front of the world, Meri's composure shattered, tears ran down her face. For the first time, the woman who had supported Cody through humiliations and betrayals cried in open court. But how did it turn out this way? How did Christine, a marriage counselor's wife once branded the rebellious sexenarian wife, who had the temerity to bolt the family arrangement, end up obtaining the most consequential courtroom win in sister wives' history? And why was Meri, the longest-standing partner in this fractured plural marriage, left devastated by the outcome? The truth is hidden in a web of financial records, secret agreements, and courtroom confrontations that expose the very foundation of the Brown family as rotten to its core. We've uncovered leaked documents, eyewitness testimony, and insider accounts that reveal the real story behind the ruling. And when you finally see the pieces come together, you'll realize why Meri's meltdown wasn't all about the money. It was about lost trust over decades, betrayal, and a stunning legal precedent that could unravel everything Kody and Robyn worked so hard to achieve. This isn't gossip. This is the incendiary truth the cameras never wanted you to hear. And if you think this is where the story ends, think again, because what went down in that courtroom had the potential to set off a legal domino effect that will forever alter Sister Wives, TLC's tightly controlled empire, and each and every one of the Brown family members. Before we get into the documents, the decisions, and the jaw-dropping betrayals, ensure you are subscribed and notifications are enabled. Because this story isn't finished, and when the next round of hearings begins, you'll want to know before anyone else. Now, let's start where this all began. The hidden financial deal that Christine discovered, and the moment she decided she'd had enough of Kody's empire of lies. It started quietly. Christine wasn't supposed to see the papers. She wasn't even supposed to be aware of the signatures, the withdrawals, or the money trail leading directly to Kody and Robyn's personal account. Christine had believed for years that the family fund, the account that was supposed to take care of all the wives and the children, was being divided fairly. Kody made it a point to say it so many times it became like scripture, everything into the pot, and it is all split equally. But hidden within a pile of mundane TLC contract documents was something Christine couldn't overlook. The figures didn't add up. Payments that were to be split between all the wives were being deposited into one account with just two names on it: Kody and Robyn Brown. Not Meri, not Janelle, not Christine. At first, Christine assumed it must be an oversight. Perhaps the accountant simply omitted the other names. Perhaps it was simply a filing mistake. But the more she dug, the more it became apparent. This wasn't careless accounting. This was a plan to cut Janelle, Meri, and her out, while Kody and Robyn increased their financial grip, and the dollar figure astounding. According to the leaked documents, more than $300,000 in TLC earnings had been diverted into that select account in a single year. And that was only the part that Christine was able to document. If it was being done for a year, how long had it been occurring? Christine's mind whirled. This was not about money. This was about loyalty, trust, and the lie she'd been sold for decades, that Kody loved all his wives equally. So she did what Kody never thought she ever would. She called her lawyer. For the first time, Christine wasn't playing by the family rules. She wasn't keeping the peace or swallowing her anger. She was willing to lay out the truth, no matter how explosive it would turn out to be. And when Christine's lawyers subpoenaed bank accounts, the findings were even more deplorable than she had envisioned. Not only did Kody and Robyn establish a shadow account, but they used it to fund luxury expenses that flew right in the face of the family-first rhetoric. A $50,000 down payment on Robyn's mansion. A $20,000 splurge on high-end jewelry. Tens of thousands paid out to consultants no one could name. Christine's lawyer had all they needed to make their case. And when the judge saw the paperwork, it became obvious Christine wasn't making anything up. She was correct. However, while Christine was preparing for her life's battle, Meri had no clue her own loyalty was going to be tested like never before. and when the reality hit her at last, she shattered in ways that fans had never witnessed. The courtroom was filled that morning. The fans of the show, reporters with pens poised, and even some old friends from Flagstaff were quiet as the Brown family piled in. Christine seemed relaxed, composed, even a little relieved to finally be here. Cody, however, couldn't conceal his annoyance. Arms crossed tightly on his chest, jaw set, hair pulled back a little too hard. When the judge brought the proceedings to order, Christine's lawyer had no hesitation. They strode directly to the evidence table, dumping down on it a thick binder full of yellow-stickered bank statements, wire transfers, and receipts. The noise reverberated throughout the room like thunderclap. This, the lawyer indicating the first exhibit, is evidence that money intended for all 4 wives was redirected into an account only held by Mr. Brown and Mrs. Robyn Brown. Gasps circulated throughout the gallery. Even Meri leaned forward, her eyebrows furrowed. She trusted Cody to take care of the family's finances. If what Christine's lawyer was saying was true, then Meri, too, had been cut out of money she thought was hers. Cody's lawyer tried to object, but the judge silenced them. "We'll hear the evidence," he said firmly. The attorney continued. Page by page, they spread it all out. TLC deposits sent directly into the hidden account, withdrawals made for house expenses that didn't equate to the family residence, payments to high-end suppliers made in Robyn's name. Every fragment went together like a jigsaw puzzle, and the image was horrid. When it was finally Cody's turn to speak, he leapt from his chair, his words growing louder with each passing sentence. "This is absurd," he bellowed. "I have given up everything for this family. That money was for us, for our survival. Christine has no idea what it means to keep this family together." But the judge wasn't impressed. Calmly, he asked one question. "Mr. Brown, if this money was for the whole family, then why did your name and Robyn's appear on the account and no one else's?" The silence that followed was deafening. Cody stuttered, attempting to clarify that it was easier that way, that the other wives didn't need to know the details. But by then, the harm was done. His credibility was irreparably damaged, and Christine's case was stronger than ever. And then came the moment that nobody anticipated. Christine's lawyer revealed a document that changed everything. A signed transfer slip showing Meri's name had been deliberately removed from one of the accounts. Meri's face went pale. She clutched her chest, her eyes wide in disbelief. For years, she had defended Cody, even when it cost her friendships with the other wives, and now, in public view, she was being presented with evidence that Cody had cut her loose just as callously as he'd done Christine. The courtroom was no longer about Christine winning her case. It was about exposing the truth that every wife had quietly feared but never wanted to admit. And for Meri, that realization was the breaking point. The courtroom had already been tense, but when Christine's lawyer presented the signed transfer slip with Meri's name scratched off, the entire atmosphere shifted. Suddenly, it wasn't just Christine's fight anymore. Everyone could see the betrayal extend far deeper. Meri's lips trembled as she stared at the document. At first, she shook her head as if refusing to believe what her own eyes were telling her. She whispered something under her breath, too faint for the microphones to catch. But the look on her face said it all. Cody had cut her out, too. The tears came slowly at first, then poured freely. Meri buried her face in her hands, shoulders convulsing. For a woman who had kept her pain locked behind doors for so long, this public disintegration was heartbreaking. Christine looked over, and for one instant the cold distance between the two women disappeared. Christine's eyes softened. She had entered court to vilify Cody, but she hadn't wished for Meri to endure like this. If anything, Christine wanted Meri to finally understand what she had come to know years before, that loyalty to Cody meant at the expense of your own pride. But Cody, he didn't budge. He reclined in his chair, arms folded, looking ahead. Not once did he put out his hand for Meri. Not once did he express even an ounce of worry. His silence was louder than any words could be. Her hurt meant nothing to him, the judge saw. "Mrs. Brown," he said softly, "do you require a recess?" Meri struggled to calm herself, dabbing her face with shaking hands. "No," she breathed. "No, I am all right." But she wasn't all right. It was written all over her face. Years of emotional abuse had boiled over in a single crushing moment of public embarrassment. And yet, there was something strong in her tears. For so long, Meri had been the quiet one, the one who remained even when the marriage was unloving, even when Cody had publicly prioritized Robyn over her. But here, in front of cameras and microphones, she couldn't remain silent anymore. The truth came to light, not only about the cash, but about the manner in which she had been thrown away like she was irrelevant. The gallery murmured among themselves. Journalists wrote furiously. It was no longer a court hearing. It was a day of reckoning, and Meri, for the first time, was no longer a secondary player in Cody's drama. She was living proof of betrayal on his part. Christine's triumph mattered. But in that moment, it was Meri's tears that would dominate the headlines. The loyal first wife, breaking down in court while the judge ruled against the man she had sacrificed her life for. And the truth was, the worst was yet to come. Because the moment Christine's team presented the next batch of evidence, even Robyn could not remain silent. As Meri swabbed her tears away and attempted to pull herself together, the courtroom waited for the next drama. Christine's lawyer wasn't finished. They shone their light on Robyn, the wife who, the documents say, profited the most from the secret account. This receipt, the attorney said, holding up another exhibit, indicates a $50,000 payment made in direct transfer from the disputed account to cover the down payment on Mrs. Robyn Brown's residence. Funds that were to be divided among all of the wives were instead used for her sole benefit. Gasps filled the gallery once again. Every eye turned toward Robyn, seated rigidly next to Cody. Her face was beet red, lips compressed into a thin line. She held her silence for a moment. Then, in a hard voice that rang out across the courtroom, she spoke. "That money wasn't taken," she said, her voice breaking. "It was survival. Cody and I were the only ones really working at this point. Christine quit. Meri pulled away. Janelle had money of her own. We were the only ones attempting to hold this family together." The room was filled with whispers of murmurs. Robyn wasn't merely defending herself. She was accusing the other wives of the very financial infidelity being revealed. Christine leaned back in her chair, shaking her head in amazement. She didn't have to utter a word. The proof spoke louder than words, but the tantrum only seemed to make Robyn defensive, and the judge promptly shut her down. "Mrs. Brown," said the judge sternly, "this is not an appropriate time for an emotional appeal. The facts are plain. You profited from an account which excluded the other wives. That is the question before us now." Robyn remained quiet, her breath coming quickly as she gripped at Cody's arm. He stroked her hand absent-mindedly, but his gaze was locked on the judge with an expression of sheer defiance. For Meri, the conversation was another stab to the heart. Undefined, she had devoted decades to this family just to be wiped off paper, and now Robyn had the nerve to offer that she didn't contribute. Undefined, her tears became a frigid stare. Undefined, for the first time in years, Meri wasn't silently suffering. She was seething with anger. The atmosphere in the courtroom was oppressive. Reporters frantically scribbled, cameras flashed from the rear of the courtroom, and Christine's attorney, seeing momentum, readied to present the most incriminating piece of testimony up to that point, the deposition of a financial planner who had examined the Browns' accounts. If Christine's papers were the smoking gun, this testimony would be the firing squad. And when that planner testified, the whole Brown empire collapsed before their eyes. The judge summoned the next witness, a financial advisor who had been hired to analyze the Browns' accounts. Suave, efficient, and with a pile of neatly stacked binders, the advisor went into the stand with the self-assurance of someone with nothing to lose and everything to disclose. Christine's attorney started the interrogation. "Can you tell the court what you found when you analyzed the Browns' accounts?" The consultant nodded. "Yes. During the 5-year period, I uncovered recurring patterns of money being taken out of the family pool account and deposited into a private account only Mr. Kody Brown and Mrs. Robyn Brown have access to. The amount in question is just over $1.8 million. The courtroom exploded. Gasps, whispers, even some audible "Oh my gods" filled the room. The number was far higher than anyone expected. Meri buried her face in her hands again. Christine closed her eyes, steadying herself, and Cody, his face flushed crimson as he muttered angrily to his lawyer. Christine's attorney continued, "And what were those funds used for?" The consultant flipped through the binder. Mostly mortgage payments and improvements on Mrs. Robyn Brown's house. Private school fees for her kids and discretionary spending, jewelry, vacations, designer furniture. None of these costs seemed to benefit the other wives or their children. the words slice like knives. Each item on that list created a picture of extravagance for one wife while the others scrambled to manage their own. When Kody's attorney stood to cross-examine, the plan was apparent: discredit the witness. "Isn't it true," he pushed, "that Mr. Brown has always been the legal head of household, and thus has discretion over family finances?" But the consultant didn't bat an eye. Even if that were the case, funds provided by TLC were explicitly designated in contracts as payment for the entire family, not for the personal use of one or two individuals. What I've seen here is a clear violation of both contractual agreements and basic fiduciary responsibility. The judge leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing. The gravity of the testimony was impossible to deny. Christine's attorney allowed the silence to fill the room, allowing the incriminating details to settle. At last, they broke their silence. "No further questions, Your Honor." The harm was done. The courtroom was shocked, the gallery abuzz with incredulity, and for the first time even Robyn appeared shaken, her eyes nervously flicking towards Cody as if to whisper silently if he had an idea. But he didn't. The empire he had created on favoritism and secrecy was crumbling before the eyes of all. And as the consultant removed his feet from the stand, Christine's team realized that they had just struck the final blow. What would follow would decide not only the verdict, but the legacy of the Brown family itself. When the judge called Kody Brown to the stand, the courtroom appeared to hold its breath. For years, Cody had set the agenda. On television, in interviews, even in private fights within his own family. He was accustomed to holding power. But here, sworn in with evidence piled high against him, that power was slipping away from him. He patted his tie, swallowed hard, and leaned forward toward the microphone. His attorney posed the first question. "Mr. Brown, why were the financial accounts set up the way they were?" Cody nodded hastily, too hastily. "Yes, I was doing it to protect the family. Placing everything in one account was easier, safer." Christine is making it sound nefarious, but it wasn't. It was about efficiency, not fraud. Christine's lawyer stood to cross-examine. "Efficiency, Mr. Brown. If it was efficiency, why were yours and Robyn's names the only ones on the account? Why not Meri's, or Janelle's, or even Christine's own name?" Cody fidgeted in his seat. "Because they weren't involved. They didn't want to handle finances. They trusted me." "Trusted you," the attorney echoed, their voice cutting. "And how did you return that trust? By purchasing luxury jewelry, by funding private education for Robyn's kids, while other wives got by on minimal budgets." Cody's expression grew hard. His voice increased in volume. "That is not fair. The money I spent was on the family. Just because Christine left does not mean she gets to rewrite history. She left us, and now she wants to cash in." The judge held up a hand to calm him down. "Mr. Brown," he said sternly, "answer the question directly. Did you or did you not use money that was meant for the family to pay for items that only you and Mrs. Robyn Brown had?" Cody stalled for the first time. He mouthed an opening, closed it once more, and lastly mumbled, "Yes, but it wasn't wrong." The words hovered in the air like a guilty secret, reporters wrote hastily, the gallery abuzz with incredulity. Christine sat rigid, her expression impassive. Meri, however, shook her head in wordless devastation. After all those years of standing up for him, Cody had just testified under oath that he had put Robyn above them all. The lawyer continued to question him. "So you confess. The money went into your and Robyn's pockets. Despite TLC agreements, they would be divided equally among all wives?" Cody thumped his hand on the podium. "This is absurd," Christine envied Robyn. "That is what this is about. Not money, not equality. It is about envy." But the tirade didn't assist him. If anything, it vindicated Christine's claim all along that Cody could not distinguish between personal bias and his responsibility to the family. The judge leaned forward, speaking in a calm but firm tone. "Mr. Brown, this court is not here to referee jealousy. It is here to weigh evidence. And the evidence is not on your side." Cody swallowed hard, his bluster diminishing for the first time. He seemed more like a cornered man and less like the patriarch at the helm, and as he descended from the witness stand, Christine's triumph was slowly becoming inevitable. By the time Cody descended from the witness stand, the atmosphere within the room had changed. His rantings of anger, his half-admission, and his refusal to own up had dented his case. But Christine's lawyer wasn't going to let the trial conclude without the kind of evidence that leaves no question remaining. "Your Honor," the attorney began, holding up a sealed folder, "we would like to introduce one last exhibit into evidence." The judge nodded. "Proceed." From the folder, the attorney extracted a chain of emails and text messages acquired in discovery. The courtroom leaned in as enlarged printouts were shown on a screen. The messages were between Cody and a financial advisor, messages that removed every excuse he had made to date. Own message, from almost 2 years prior, revealed Cody instructing the advisor plainly. "Ensure Robyn and I are the only ones on the account. The others don't have access. If Christine inquires, just tell her it is a tax matter." The gallery burst into whispers. Meri gasped in shock. Christine's attorney let the momentary shock settle in before proceeding. Also sent was a more incriminating note. It stated, "Take the TLC settlement for the Flagstaff house mortgage. Christine will never find out. She believes the money is being divided equally." The gallery burst out once more, and this time the judge had to bang his gavel for order. Christine's crew didn't have to spin anything or make it up. They were right there in black and white. Wearing her tears returned, but this time they weren't tears of confusion. They were tears of clarity. Every single doubt, every single excuse she had been lying to herself about for years disintegrated in that instant. She wasn't hallucinating about Cody's favoritism. She wasn't being crazy. He had intentionally plotted to exclude her, just as he had Christine and Janelle. Robyn remained rigid next to Cody, her face white. For once, she did not attempt to say anything. She was unable to. The proof did not point just at him. She benefited from the dishonesty, whether she wished to admit it or not. Christine, on the other hand, sat upright. She had already walked out on Cody once, but here, in this courtroom, she walked away with her dignity intact, and the truth at last on her side. The judge read the messages slowly, his face unyielding. Then he turned to Cody. "Mr. Brown, do you deny sending these communications?" Cody fidgeted in his seat, his words almost inaudible. "No, I don't deny it." That was all. The defense had been destroyed. The case had gone decisively Christine's way. The decision wasn't in, but everyone in the room knew what was going to happen. And for Cody, the consequences would be disastrous. The courtroom fell silent as the judge leaned forward to make his ruling. He spoke slowly, guardedly, the words slicing through the air like a knife. Having examined the evidence submitted, the bank records, the consultant's testimony, and the written correspondence from Mr. Brown himself, this court rules in favor of the plaintiff, Christine Brown. Christine's eyes drifted shut as relief enveloped her. The knot in her shoulders at last dissipated, her lawyer laying a reassuring hand on her arm. She had struggled to arrive at this moment, and now the truth was acknowledged in a court of law. The judge went on. "It is the order of this court that Mr. Kody Brown and Mrs. Robyn Brown are held liable for misappropriation of funds intended for the family. The $1.8 million is to be repaid to the group's estate, with Christine permitted her share per the initial TLC contracts." Gasps and whispers swept the room. The figure was astronomical, the responsibility unprecedented. For years, fans had speculated on favoritism, on financial hiddenness. Now, it was no longer speculation. It was a legal reality. The judge wasn't finished. He focused his attention squarely on Cody. "In addition, this court chastises you, Mr. Brown, for exploiting your position of power in the family to the disadvantage of your other wives. Your conduct has incurred quantifiable damage, both monetary and emotional, and will not be tolerated in the name of family management." Cody's jaw clenched, his face reddened, his fists bracing against the table, but he remained silent. For the first time ever, he had no influence, no words, no ability to spin things his way. Robyn's eyes welled up with tears, but they weren't tears like Christine or Meri cried. They were tears of terror. Terror at losing the house, the security, the status she had while the other wives suffered. Meri, on the other hand, gazed at the judge with her glassy eyes. The verdict wasn't hers alone, but it was a vindication that she never thought she'd receive. Years of being shut out, dismissed, and treated as second class. It all came down to this moment. She wasn't delusional. She wasn't making this up. The judge himself had validated what she had always suspected. Cody never meant to treat her as an equal. The gavel descended with a ringing crack. Court is adjourned. And with that, the Brown family dynasty, already crumbling from within, was now officially shattered in the eyes of the law. But think the decision marked the end of the soap? You'd be mistaken, because outside the courtroom, the fallout between the wives, the children, and the fans was about to blow its top. As soon as the courtroom emptied, Christine emerged outside, flanked by journalists, flashing cameras, and nosy bystanders. For the first time in years, she wasn't the quiet, ignored wife in the shadows. She was the woman who stood up to Cody and prevailed. Her lawyer simply told the media that Christine had indeed been granted her rightful portion of the stolen money. Christine herself didn't rub it in anyone's face, but her smile said it all. She had been ignored for years as too emotional, too sensitive, even selfish, for wanting to be independent. But now, thanks to the verdict in her favor, the world saw what she was really like: strong, resolute, and righteous. Inside the court building, though, the mood was quite different. Meri remained behind, sitting quietly in the gallery well after the gavel had struck. Her body trembled as tears flowed down her cheeks. She wasn't sobbing for Christine's triumph. She was sobbing for herself. The decision had pulled every sore back into the forefront. The years of being put on the bench, the constant broken promises, the times when Cody embarrassed her in public defending Robyn. Meri had talked herself into staying all this time due to obligation, family, and perhaps even expectation that eventually Cody would come back to her. But the judge's ruling was a vindication she could not deny. Cody had never meant to be fair to her. The money Christine struggled for could have been hers too, ought to have been hers, but she had not possessed the energy to stand up for it. Undefined, and that knowledge hurt her intensely. Cody and Robyn stood in the corner of the courthouse hallway, bent into the shadows and muttering angrily. Robyn clutched Cody's arm like a lifeline, whispering, "What are we going to do?" "Undefined, they're going to take the house, Cody. Undefined, they're going to take everything." Cody for once didn't have an answer. Undefined, he paced, muttering about biased judges and ungrateful wives. But the truth was unavoidable. He had lost, and the loss was public. Outside, fans and former supporters of the family gathered with signs and chants. Others jeered at Christine's husband Cody, calling him greedy and manipulative. Others cheered Christine, brandishing signs that said, "Justice for Christine, and the wives deserve better." The ruling had transcended a matter of law. It had become a reckoning about culture. But the most profound reckoning wasn't in the courthouse or on the street. It was in Meri's heart, as she faced the truth she had avoided for over a decade. She had built her life around a man who never truly valued her. Undefined, and now, even the law had confirmed it. Christine did not fling her fists into the air or spin down the courthouse steps like a Hollywood movie star. She did not have to. The triumph was etched on her face. Standing around her were her children, Aspin, Mickelty, Isabel, and the rest, each of whom beamed with pride. They had observed their mother quietly enduring for far too long. Then they watched her stand strong. Reporters rushed to her, inquiring how it felt to win. Christine's response was brief. "This isn't just about money. This is about fairness. It is about showing my kids, and all of Cody's kids, that they matter, that their mothers matter, and that no one should be allowed to manipulate or take advantage of them." Her words hit like lightning for fans. It was the quote of the day. For Cody, it was a knife to the heart. He realized Christine wasn't speaking about herself. She was speaking about him, about the years of domination he attempted to exert, and how it all came crashing down under the scrutiny of the law. 3 houses away, Janelle stood in solidarity with Christine quietly. She wasn't the one immediately impacted by the decision, but she stood side by side with her old sister and wife. Cameras captured the moment Janelle squeezed Christine's hand and whispered, "You did it. You finally did it." It was a reminder that their love, tested through years of having to struggle together, was more powerful than anything Cody had attempted to drive between them. But where Christine and Janelle were discovering solidarity, Meri was falling into despair. That night, she didn't celebrate, she didn't put up a congratulatory message, and she didn't smile for the cameras. Rather, she went back to her quiet house and sat in the dark, reliving every detail of the courtroom drama in her mind. Why hadn't she stood up for herself? Why had she settled for crumbs when Christine demanded bread? For Meri, the decision wasn't just Christine's win. It was a mirror she did not wish to confront. A mirror of her own pain, her own wasted years, her own silence. And although no one ever said it out loud, the whispers had started, if Christine could struggle. Why couldn't Meri? Robyn Brown had always been Cody's greatest defender, the one who protected him from criticism, who wept for him, who claimed the world just didn't understand. But once the judge ruled, even Robyn's masterfully constructed front began to unravel. Within their estate, the air was poisonous. Robyn fumed at the injustice of it all, stomping from room to room in tears. They don't see the real us, Cody. They don't get it. They're making us out to be villains. But Cody wasn't paying attention. He was pacing himself, running on about conspiracies. In his head, the judge was unfair, the attorneys were crooked, even Christine's victory was somehow staged for television. His paranoia seeped into every discussion, making Robyn's desperation all the more unbearable. For once, the pair who had set themselves up as the stable ones of the family were cracking under the strain of their own terror. They weren't just concerned about the cash, they were afraid of what would happen next. More lawsuits, more investigations, more wives coming forward with their own allegations. And as Cody and Robyn careened out of control in private, the world at large was anything but still. In the online world, the response was explosive. Christine's win went viral. Fans unleashed social media with hashtags such as #JusticeForChristine and #SisterWivestruth. Most admired her strength and resilience, hailing her the hero of the Sister Wives drama. However, praise for Christine was accompanied by stern censure for Cody, and to the surprise of many, Meri as well. Sympathy was extended to Meri from some fans, noting how long she had been emotionally abandoned. Others became frustrated, questioning why she continued to remain quiet while Christine and Janelle spoke out. Remarks such as Meri deserves more, but she must fight for it. And why does Meri continue to defend him? Overwhelmed discussion forums. Meri, naturally, never got back. But she read each sentence. Every remark was an added stone to the burden crushing her chest. While Christine was celebrating liberty, Cody and Robyn were suffocating in paranoia, and Meri was simply sitting in silent agony. It became obvious that the family wasn't only shattered. It was being condemned in the court of public opinion, and that condemnation was no less harsh than the verdict rendered in the courtroom. Cody had pranced with swagger for years, brandishing grand homes, brand new rides, and visions of building the dream at Coyote Pass. But the court defeat did everything immediately. The judge's directive wasn't a metaphorical slap on the wrist, it was actual money. Money Cody no longer possessed. Christine's win meant accounts were frozen, assets were at risk, and for the first time ever, Cody stood a chance of losing the very existence he had built around Robyn. Mortgage payments hung over his head. Bills piled up, and with TLC supposedly pulling back, the constant flow of reality television revenue was no longer assured. Robyn freaked out. She pleaded with Cody to sell property in a hurry before additional rulings could take it away from them. She wept about her children, about losing the mansion, about being punished for things she said she didn't do. But Cody wasn't rational. He snapped at Robyn, snapped at his attorneys, even snapped at his own kids when they questioned him. His anger covered up his fear, but in the back of his mind he knew the truth. Christine's decision was only the start. The money walls were coming down, and quickly. And Meri reached her breaking point too. She had kept quiet for years, taking every slight, every embarrassment. But now the quiet was intolerable. Seeing Christine walk away in dignity while still being bound to the past was looking into a future she didn't desire. One late evening, Meri sat by herself in her living room, browsing fan comments on her phone. One in particular stood out. Meri deserves better, but she has to fight for it. No one else can do it for her. She read it again, until the tears started falling. For the first time, Meri admitted to herself what she had always avoided. Cody was never coming back. Not to her, not to the marriage, not to the dream she had once believed in. The judge's ruling had freed Christine, but it had also exposed Meri's deepest wound. And now she had to make a choice, remain in the shadows, or finally stand on her own. During the days after the decision, Christine's life seemed brighter than it had in years. She shared intimate moments with her children, rejoiced with Janelle, and for the first time felt really free. No more waiting for Cody to change, no more broken promises, plainly peace, dignity, and the opportunity to start over. For Kody and Robyn, though, life became increasingly shadowed day by day. There were debt collectors on the phone, lawyers making demands. Even intimate friends started to shy away, fearful of getting swept up in the storm. The one-time proud patriarch now appeared cornered, furious, and vanquished. But it was the story of Meri that weighed most heavily emotionally after the verdict. She retreated from the cameras, from the family, even from friends. Speculation raged that she was contemplating a public statement, perhaps even taking action legally herself. But first, Meri had to confront herself. One night, she finally collapsed. Totally. Not the silent tears she'd cried in the courtroom. This was different. This was raw. She shook with sobs as she said out loud what she'd been too frightened to whisper for years. "He doesn't love me, he never did, and I can't pretend anymore." For Meri, the breakdown was agonizing, but purifying. Within that breakdown came a spark of consciousness. She didn't know yet if she would be taking Christine's path to court, or if she would just quietly walk away. But for the first time in decades, she was no longer holding on to the myth of a marriage that had perished years ago. The judge's decision may have been about Christine's finances, but in reality, it revealed so much more. It revealed the imbalance, the betrayal, and the cracks that had been in plain sight all along. Christine emerged the winner. Undefined Janelle was standing tall alongside her. Undefined Robyn clung to Cody with all her might as his empire fell apart. Defined property and Meri, while broken, had now reached the point where healing could start. The sister wives' family would never remain the same again. Defined property and perhaps, just perhaps, that was the justice Meri deserved most.